Okay. Hello. I'm Brian. I'm a alcoholic. I have family. Glad to be here, and certainly grateful for another day of sobriety. Now, I see a bunch of faces. I just want to know, out of the people on camera, who was here last Saturday? Was anybody in last Saturday's meeting? Thank you. You will be disappointed after this meeting. I will tell you that right now. I didn't know whether somebody, my friend Harvey had, I guess, heard me get my 29-year chip in August and suggested to Phil, I don't know, that I could speak. And anyway, I got this message from this guy in Tennessee, and he said, "Will you speak at this Zoom meeting?" And, I said, "Sure." And so I figured, well, I might as well, listen last week before I speak. And so I hear Deb. And if you weren't here, she was the most stunningly beautiful woman I have ever seen. Her makeup was flawless. And as a gay man, I know flawless makeup. She had flawless makeup. She had about 173 years of sobriety. She spoke like a 6 o'clock news anchor woman, and she gave an in-depth lecture for an hour on step 6 and 7. And I'm like, and I message Phil, and I'm like, "Uh, is this needed?" And it was the old, I'm not good enough. It's the old tapes. I'm not good enough. And Phil was great, and he said, just what they tell you in AA, you know, you're good enough. You're a sober man. Keep coming back. I mean, right? I mean, this is the only place in my life that I have ever gotten unconditional love is in AA. It's incredible. I mean, what do they tell the newcomers? You know what they say, when you put your head on the, we could all say, when you put every night you put your head on the pillow without taking a drink or a drug, you're a winner. That's it. And so I really appreciated that, Phil, and I'm glad to be here. I got nervous. I said, "How many speakers do you have?" And he said, "One." And I said, "Well, how long do I talk for?" He said, "About an hour." I said, "Well, how many people are on your Zoom call?" He goes, "A couple hundred." And I said, "Okay, all right." And I figured, eating and talking are my two biggest strengths, and talking about myself, I can do that. I'm an alcoholic. You know what they say, an alcoholic's favorite opera is me, 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 me. So anyway, let's start. I was born in Connecticut in 1960 something, and at 11:30 in the morning, and they could have put a diaper on me, got me to a noon meeting, and I would have fit in just fine. I think I was born with this disease. And interestingly, I didn't grow up in a family of alcoholics. I grew up, I was the son of two first generation Americans. All my grandparents were immigrants. Some of them were legal, and some of them were not legal. So whoever thinks that we have a problem nowadays that's brand new, not so much. Uh, I was the youngest child, and I had two older sisters, and my parents were very first generation. They came here for the American dream, and they believed through enough education and hard work, they could achieve success. And they did. They worked very hard and they were successful. I didn't inherit that gene of working hard. That wasn't in my cards. I was more the slacker, half measures got half measures. And I did feel different growing up. Not because so much I was gay. That wasn't really the thing. I don't know why I felt different. I know I grew up on Long Island, and my parents, we were a Jewish family and in a community where there really weren't any. Um, but it was different because my parents were affluent. They both worked. My dad was a surgeon. My mom was a successful attorney, and my older sister with special needs. She had a fairly large stroke at the age of 3. So back then in the 60s, special needs, disabilities, they weren't like they were now. They weren't as accepted. And so I felt very, very different. Um, and I was always sort of a scared child. I didn't like sports. I never understood when they put me this in the gymnasium. For a little gay boy to be put in a gymnasium. And what was that game? Dodgeball, dodgeball, where they take these balls and try to hit you. Yeah. And I didn't really understand that much. So, anyway, I grew up and alcoholism was not part of my family. My parents were an alcoholic, my grandparents weren't. It ended up that my mom did have one brother who was alcoholic, and but there were other diseases. Definitely, my parents were addicted, were workaholics. They felt the need to build their dream. Um, I believe my mom was addicted to fear and worry, and so there were other things going on. Um, Life went on. And then about the age, oh, I know I was born with this disease because the first, and I apologize, you know, uh, drugs are a little part of my story. And the first addiction that I remember was when I was 5 years old. Always forget, what's it called? Nitric oxide or something? When you go to the dentist and you get that sweet air, okay? I was 5 years old. They gave me that sweet air. And I remember being so buzzed, floating from the ceiling. And I said, I love that. I love that chair, that magic chair in the dentist office. So I decided not to brush my teeth, hoping I would get a cavity, hoping I'd be able to go back into that dentist chair and get that gas. Well, needless to say, now I have, about 60-year-old fillings that are falling out of my mouth. So I guess the wreckage of the past continues. But that's true. I remember the first drink I had, but I really wasn't a drinker. I was introduced to, as I always say, non-habit forming marijuana when I was 15 years old. And as soon as I had that, I said, okay, I'm going to do this every day for the rest of my life. I had found it. I had found my spiritual experience. For me, I would have my smokes and listen to my Bob Marley and my reggae music and, Dan Fogelberg. It was the 70s and just sort of float away. Um, I was a daily user, daily. And I went through high school, got to college, and found other friends that were interested in the same vices. Not as much as me. Okay. There was one or two of them that liked it as much as I did from college. And yes, a few of them are on Zoom right now. So it's amazing, as well as some friends from high school. So recovery is amazing. Um, life just happened. Life happened. I graduated college. I don't know how. Oh, yes, I do know how. I cheated. I remember they interviewed Matt Lauer once on the Today Show, and they asked him like what he got on his SATs, and he said, "Whatever the guy next to me got on the SATs," and that's how I got through school. Ended up getting into law school. I don't know how. Ended up graduating law school. I don't know how. And but yet my disease was certainly doing push-ups. I decided 6 months into law school that my career should really be selling clothes in Macy's. I don't know. I thought that would be easy, a lot easier than studying for the bar. And so I told my folks, I think I'm going to go into retail. And my mother said, you're almost done with law school. You only have another 2.5 years. Why don't you graduate and then do whatever you want? So I said, okay. And interesting. I remember being in my last year of law school, and I remember it was so vividly, somebody came up to me and they said, Brian, did you hear the Challenger blew up? And I was like, and your point is what? It didn't affect me. Now, if they would have said, Brian, I was in St. Louis at the time. St. Louis is out of alcohol and drugs. The tears would have been flowing from my face. But the fact that some spaceship blew up, it didn't connect with me. And that's really fun. I know the difference because the first tragedy after I got sober was the Oklahoma City bombing. And I remember that, and I remember how that affected me. And so I realized wasn't goal oriented. All I wanted to do was sit on my couch and do bomb hits in my underwear and watch TV. And I wanted to get paid for that. I figured, is there any kind of career in that? And then somebody told me about the what is it? The Nelson rate? Is it Nelson? Sean, is it Nelson ratings? Is that it? That about TV? Okay, Nelson. Thank you, dear. So the Nelson ratings, where you watch, they get. I said maybe I could do that. I could watch TV programs and get paid for that, but I didn't figure out how to do that. So I saw a therapist, and I said, I wanted to want. I wanted to be goal oriented and everything like that, like my family was. And she said, well, maybe you might want to rethink your smoking. And I thought, oh, okay. So I was graduated school in St. Louis and I was moving back to New York. And I figured that would be the last pot I ever smoke in my life. And I rolled the largest, biggest, it was like that Cheech and Chong movie from the 70s. It was huge. And I said, this is going to be the end. And I gave away all the rest of my stuff. And I smoked and I drove, out of St. Louis to my new future. And needless to say, I didn't get very far in that drive. I drove from St. Louis, I think about 40 miles into, Illinois. And then I realized I think I should get a hotel. So I got a hotel. And then I realized I gave away everything for this new beginning. What does one do? And the hotel had a bar. And I figured, oh, let me go have a drink in the bar. And then I realized, okay, I found it. I found it. So for me, I went from a daily drug user to a daily drinker in one day. Because for me, a drug is a drug, high is a high. It's just me. If you don't agree, I mean, this is just my feelings. A matter of fact, there was an old guy in Florida that used to say, but I'm not a scientist, that when you drink alcohol, like it creates a certain drug in your brain that has a name for it. So for me, it's all the same. I don't care whether people drink their drugs, smoke their drugs, whatever it is. I know that I was drinking every day. And a lot of the yes happened to me. The weird thing is, I did not know I had a problem with alcohol and drugs. Everyone's different. There are some people that say, "Oh, knew I was an alcoholic since the age of, 3.5." I had no idea. None. I used to drink a certain drink, and I used to, like a martini, and I used to think of the show Bewitched. I don't know, some of you may not remember, but thank you, Erwin. It's shaking his head, Bewitched. So then, what was it? Darren would come home and have a martini, and I just thought that's what I did, except, I have two or three, but I did not know I had a problem. Work did not go that well. I had a retail career, and either I lost jobs or I would quit before where I knew they would fire me. So the jobs that I didn't get fired, I would be like, I'm gonna be resigning now. And I would say, I'm giving you 2 weeks notice, but I don't feel well for the next 2 weeks. So I'd basically not show up again. The tricks we play. And money. I, weird. I never thought of myself living beyond the age of 36. Why? I don't know. I just in my mind, I never envisioned that. And I remember my first job at Macy's. I was like 28. My dad said, "Oh, did you sign up for like that 401k retirement thing?" And I thought he's insane. And I had a lot of student loans, even though my parents were rich and they were paying for my education. But I found out that you can get student loans for, if you're a student, and then you can spend that money on drugs and alcohol. So I mean, craziness, um, car accidents, um, arrests, like multiple. Um, uh, it just loss of friendships. I wasn't a good friend. I One of the most challenging things I remember about my drinking. Oh, I'm freshman class of 94. I came in when I was 32. The August is when I came in. The May before I came in for Mother's Day. It's Mother's Day in May. Yeah, I think I was living in Atlanta, and my parents happened to have been in Atlanta for Mother's Day for business or something like that. And I remember my mother saying to me, the best thing I can give her for Mother's Day would be not to see her because families get tired of this crap and friends get tired of this. And this is when I get emotional. It's okay. I just went to a meeting last week. I'm still learning. And the woman in the meeting said, "Don't worry about crying a lot. The more you cry, the less you pee." So I said, "Okay." So she said, um, the amazing thing is once I got sober, I remember for the first 6 years, my parents would go to any city I was in and to see me get my AA medallion, whether it's drive or fly. And every year they would call me and they would both sing happy birthday. You know, um, I felt like when I was using, like I was the Tasmanian devil, that there was like, just a cloud of destruction wherever I went. But I realized that in recovery, there's like a circle of blessings that we take with us. And those blessings affect all of us. They affect our families, our friends, our neighbors. I came in August of '94. I Nothing unusual. It was a Thursday night. I'd been to the bar. I was not drunk. I was not drunk. I guess I was drunk. There was a traffic stop near my apartment. I thought that's not going to be a problem. I felt fine. And like always, the police always said, come with us. They never said go. They always said, come with us. I guess I was almost three times the legal limit, but I didn't feel drunk, because I was good at drinking. And it was in Atlanta. I called my brother-in-law to bail me out at about 2 o'clock in the morning. We don't think of other people. He had three children. The oldest was 4 years old. He had a baby. And I called him at 2 o'clock to bail me out of jail. And he picked me up in his Ford Taurus station wagon. And I was sitting in the passenger seat. And I remember looking out the window. And do you see like the black on your computer screen? Like black. That's what that Georgia night was like. And I looked out, and this is true. I felt this feeling start at the top of my head and slowly work its way down through my shoulders. And I felt the spiritual experience. And I said the words, I guess I have a problem with this. I never said that before in my life. And that was it. I knew I lost the war. I fought the war of drugs and alcohol a long time, and I knew I lost the war. So I got home. I think I was working that next day in a retail store. I think I worked like 12 to 9 or something like that. And I knew I had to call AA. Um, uh, and because that's what one of our favorite characters on All My Children did when he called AA. And so it's actually not. It was my friend Lisa, who was from school, but I think she did it because somebody and on All My Children did it. But so I called AA at about, I don't know, 10 o'clock in the morning. I had to be at work at noon. And there was this guy, his name was Will, and he was, older, late 70s, 80, I don't know. And I told him I had just gotten out of jail and that I was looking for an AA meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow. And I said, I have to work. And he said, tomorrow. He said, well, and he was from Georgia. He said, well, if you're anything like me, you might be a little bit of a procrastinator. So, and he said, why don't you go to a meeting after work? I said, I don't get out of work till 9 o'clock. And he said, well, there's a 10 o'clock candle meeting right around the corner from your apartment. And I had seen this little red house with all these cars. I didn't know what it was. And so I went at 10 o'clock in my Brooks Brothers suit because I figured it was a meeting. And it was a candlelight meeting in where they lit one candle in the front, and they shut down all the lights in this meeting. And I thought, oh shit, I'm in a cult, and they said, are there any newcomers? No, I get my mouth, I get my mouth, hands down. And the miracle started. The miracle of recovery started. I heard that this is a fatal disease. I heard you can either sober up, get buried up, or get locked up. And after the meeting, I went and I spoke to the guy up front, and he said, do you have any alcohol in your apartment? And I said, no, because I drank a lot. So I would buy like containers each day. So it was like there was nothing left in that apartment because I drank everything every night. So he said, go, uh, come back, go to a meeting every day. It's only an hour long. It's as long as a Ricky Lake show. Remember, it was 94. And I loved it from the beginning. I loved it from the beginning. They loved me unconditionally. And when I tell you that AA is the first place that I ever felt unconditional love, it's true. It's not that my family did not love me, but they loved me very conditionally. They loved me based on how well I did in school, how I looked, the amount of money that I was able to save. And I didn't, and these people really, really said, keep coming back. And that was a trip because when I was not wearing a suit, I mean, I was a mess. I wore clogs and, I wore shorts that were inappropriately too short. And I wrapped my head in a scarf like Rhoda from the Mary Tyler Moore show. And I was a mess. And they loved me. And the miracle started. I went to a lot of meetings. I went to I would say an average of I went to about 10 meetings a week. I was single. I always was single because the only real love of my life was drugs and alcohol. So sure, I'd go out, and get, hook up for the night or something like that, but I never had a relationship. Um, how I was able to stay healthy during the early 90s with the AIDS epidemic and me drinking and living in New York. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. I've had a few miracles in my life, and I'm certainly grateful for all of them. And I lived a very lonely, scared life drinking. I could not go across the street. I could not go across. I lived across the street from a supermarket. I could not go across the street to the supermarket without a glass of booze in me. And I uh it's not the case anymore. It's incredible. It's one of the reasons why I have this backdrop on this is actually Switzerland, and it was one of the first real vacations that I went with I think for my 10th wedding anniversary. Um, we went to Switzerland, and I travel a lot for work, and I just got back from diplomatic meetings in Berlin 2 weeks ago. And I mean, when they say AA will give you a life second to none, incredible. It's incredible. Well, I didn't realize that we're very smart people. because we do a lot of finagling when we're drinking and drugging. And you know what I mean? And so I don't know why I'm thinking so Yiddish tonight. And so all of a sudden, when you stop drinking and drugging, all of a sudden it's like you get promoted. So when I was 11 months sober and I got promoted, and they wanted to move me, and I figured, I would be moving to a big city from Atlanta. They wanted to move me to Knoxville, Tennessee. I really wasn't sure about that. And so I said to, somebody who was like a temporary sponsor of mine, I said, sure that it's good for me to move to Knoxville. He said, Brian, why? Well, if I'm going to get a lot out of those meetings in Knoxville, Tennessee. He said, Brian, you don't have it. You don't have it. You don't go to meetings for what you're going to get. You go to meetings for what you're going to bring. And maybe there's something that you need to bring. And that's where your higher power wants you to be. So I moved to Knoxville and, I shared, I'm Brian, I'm gay, I'm Jewish, I'm in New York. I was just a whirlwind. And they taught me about appropriate sharing in meetings. And that's where I met my first sponsor, who was full of grace. I was as honest with him as I thought he could take, and he loved me, and it was just incredible. And I moved 5 states in the first 10 years of recovery. And they told me that AA is very portable. And it was really interesting. I remember I live in Florida now. I had about 9 years sober, and the company I was with was sold. And I went on a national job search. And I said to my sponsor at the time, I said, Bill, I think I have really taken step three because I really didn't know where I was going to end up in what part of the country. And I said, God, wherever you want me, I'll be able to go. And I think I finally took this third step of turning my will and my life over to the care of God. And he looked at me and said, No, Brian, you've taken step three already. You're just taking it to a deeper level. And for me, over the years, the steps have gotten richer. They've gotten richer, and the program has gotten richer. And it's the only program I know that it just gets amazing. There was someone, I lived in Nashville, and there was a woman in Nashville who shared that, you work your program, it's a good program, and you're happy, and you're on a great plateau, and then all of a sudden you'll have a growth spurt. And she said for her, it was year 42. She said her program was amazing, but she said it was like when Dorothy opened the door in The Wizard of Oz and everything was in color. She said in year 42 of her sobriety, her program increased like it had never increased before. So in that home group in Nashville, they always say, don't leave 5 minutes before the next miracle happens. And it's true. Because if you write down where you're going to be in 5 years, I don't care where you are in sobriety, if you work the steps, you practice the traditions, you will be blown away by where you'll end up. And I've really had been carried by my higher power. I've been carried by some people. I remember I was 3 days sober, and I spoke to my friend Lisa, and she goes, "How is it going?" I said, well, I think the meetings are good. I think I'm going to try it. I'm really not sure I'm an alcoholic. And she said, I'm really not supposed to say this, but she doesn't really follow rules. But she said, if you've been using every single day for 17 and a half years, and you've only stopped for 3 days, and you are already trying to convince yourself you're not an alcoholic, then you're an alcoholic, and you need to be going to your meetings. And I was like, wow, she just said it like it was. Oh, another thing, relapse. Okay. I mean, Tom Cudahy on All My Children, he didn't relapse. And I go to this room and I start hearing about relapse. And I said to Lisa about a month later, I don't understand about this relapse stuff. And I said, I don't want to do that. And she said, then don't. Amazing. Like I was afraid somebody was gonna, push me down and pour booze down my throat. And if you don't want to relapse, then don't. And I was like, wow. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, if it sounds like I love AA, I love AA. It is it ended up I ended up meeting someone and we'll be celebrating our 21st anniversary in December, which is amazing. Um, I've seen him have I think three drinks in 21 years. Like he'll have a drink and then he won't have another one for 8 years. And I was like, okay. And he knows that AA is my priority above everything, above everything. And when they say don't drink no matter what, they mean no matter what. And I've seen people lose children and terrible accidents. And what do? They go to a meeting. And I've done it. I remember when 9/11 happened, I had the day off that Monday. And when, I was watching this on TV and then when the Pentagon got hit, I thought the world was ending. I found a meeting and I went to one. And for many years, I traveled a lot in business. And this was before cell phones and computers. You would call the central office. You would tell them the city you were going to. They would tell you some meetings and give you an address, and you'd pull out a map and you'd go to the meeting. And I still go to meetings. I The weird thing for me is the more meetings I go to, it seems the more meetings I want to go to. And then the less meetings I go to, it's not like I don't still love AA, but it seems like they're not as important to me. And so, I guess that makes sense since I get a little bit of an addictive personality. So, but I do. I know that. I am addicted to uh, Judge Judy is my latest addiction. I would rather watch, the rerun of the Golden Girls for the 107th time than watch a new show because I have my addictive personality. Um, it has allowed me to be an adult. For me, I think sobriety is growing up. Um, the parents that I didn't want to see me because, I stole a lot of money from them. I was going to spend my junior year abroad, and for some reason, I didn't think I was going to find the treats that I wanted in Europe So I stole a lot of money and brought a lot of things with me, a little international drug smuggling. And so needless to say, they didn't give me the key to their home for many years. But you know something? I was the child that they decided they wanted to be the executor of their estate. And I was the one that they moved to when they got old. And my mom got sick with Lewy body dementia, which is a horrible disease. It's sort of a mixture of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And I was able to be there. I was able to be there. And, you know, about a month ago, I decided every Saturday now, I'm going to take my dad to lunch. He's 94, and we talk a lot, but every Saturday, and we love it. We love it. We do it. We laugh. And even when my mom was sick with dementia, I remember saying to her, Mom, I'm getting my chip tomorrow. And I'd say, Do you know how many years it's been? And, she would say, shake her head, no. And I'd say it was like 19 years or 20 years. And the smile on her face. The weird thing was when she passed, we went through all her books and stuff. And she grew up during World War II and she hid things like hid money and stuff like that because of what happened to her family in Europe. And so we had to go through every book to make sure there wasn't things in it. And we found a copy of the big book, highlighted, notes. She read that because her son was in AA and she wanted to know what that program was about. So if it sounds like I'm grateful, I am. Um, where am I today? I still struggle a little bit with fear, and I have a wonderful sponsor who helps me with that. It's gotten a lot better. Oh, and you know what I recently did? And I'm sorry if this is unapproved. If it is, don't do it. But somebody had said, I'd have my readings every day. I have my 24-hour a day book they gave me when I was like 3 months sober because they said, I said, I don't understand about this meditation thing. And somebody said, Brian, here's a 24-hour a day book. It's got a little thought for the prayer, a little thought for the day, a little reading, a little meditation. Read that and you can check off meditation. I said, okay. And then I started getting a book, an Al-Anon book. Why? Because I was like 6 years sober and I was having trouble with my sponsor. He was pissing me off. And I thought, well, Al-Anon is for if you have a problem with an alcoholic in your life. So I went to Al-Anon because I had a problem with my sponsor. But I still read my Al-Anon literature every day. And then about 3 months ago, somebody told me they said that there's something called Insight Timer. It's like an app that you put on your phone, and it's free little guided meditations. And you can pick whether you want a 3 minute or a 5 minute. And I've started each morning with a little guided meditation. And so, something, I realize that the program, there's got to have constant vigilance. There are no safe levels of sobriety. And when I was, 1 month sober, and that dear friend of mine looked at me or said over the phone to me, if you don't want to relapse, then don't. I still hear that voice. And so I can't keep doing the same thing because my disease is still doing push-ups. And I've seen it. I've seen people relapse after 20 years and 30 years and they die because they'll drink like the same amount that they drank when they stopped and they haven't had any alcohol for 20 years and they die of alcohol poisoning. So I am I'm very, very conscious of this um and so it is important to me. It really is. Um I have it's amazing that I have family now, family members in recovery. I think that that's really cool. That's really cool. Because I've never really been able to share it at a deeper level with people in my program. I was able to go to my niece's wedding in April and be a sober man. And let me tell you something. When I was drinking, weddings were not good for me. I didn't like anyone getting more attention. I didn't care if they were wearing a white dress or not. Okay. Weddings were not a good scene for me, but that's not the case anymore. I've now been in the same job for 18 years. As I said, I've been married for almost 21 years. I've been in the same, I own my own home. I don't have any debt. I mean, this was really very different than what I was set up for. So I really believe that I'm very blessed. I think God picked the person that wanted to get sober the least. You know those machines, what are they called? You drop a coin in it and it has the claw, and it grabs the toy and I think God like took his claw and picked the one person that loved drinking and drugging the most and wanted to get sober the least and just dropped me in AA. But you know something? I've loved it. Um, for me, coming into AA was like being dropped into a box of warm puppies. All they wanted to do was just love you. They want to love you. They want to help you. And then we've got to help the next person. And I know it's getting close to 9 o'clock because Dad is calling me. He calls me every night, leaves me a message before 9 o'clock, letting me know he's okay because I'm a sober man and I can help other people. And I want to let you know that you all help me tonight. You all help me every day. And it's our responsibility to carry the message to the next person. And I really, really appreciate the opportunity. God bless you. Thank